Hey there, I'm Zoo Java. Today I'd like to talk about some criticisms I have towards the vaccination for the cash vid virus. Call it that because it's nothing but a cash grab for all sorts of, I'm assuming, politicians who are heavily invested in items to do with this, such as uh, companies making masks, companies making those little spots that you put on the floor at stores so that everybody stands the perfect space apart. I'm sure that somebody has made millions and millions of dollars off of things like that. But anyways, I read an article in the Toronto Star today by a woman by the name of Lex Harvey entitled Canadians cheer as vaccination rates climb, but global advocates ask, at what cost? Apparently, as wealthier countries like Canada start vaccinating kids and low-risk populations, health workers and other vulnerable groups in poorer countries remain unprotected, suffering disproportionately from a pandemic with no end in sight. The widening global vaccine gap is a scandalous inequity that is prolonging the pandemic for everyone. WHO director, and that's not this WHO, World Health Organization, that is, Director General Tedros, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say what I look in, Ghebreyesus, told delegates from 194 member states at the annual assembly there is no diplomatic way to say it. A small group of countries that make and buy the majority of the world's vaccines control the fate of the rest of the world. He said more than 3/4 of the world's vaccines have been administered in just 10 countries. Let's all just start off with this, shall we? Now, he says that it's disproportionate amount. Okay, I'm inclined to agree with him there. It is a disproportionate amount. I think it's a disproportionate amount of people who got infected by this and are affected by this because one stinking country has the ineptitude to unleash it upon the entire world. As it was, when it happened, they restricted travel within their own country. So people who were from one province couldn't go to another province. They were not allowed to. But they allowed anybody who wanted to fly out of the country. This can only lead to, I would say, one explanation. How anyone could be so reckless as to allow that. Obviously, they knew there was a problem, or else they wouldn't have restricted the travel inside their own country. But why not restrict it with everybody who was there and not allow them to fly out of the country? Unless you want to spread this to the entire world on purpose. Like, is there a spot on the planet that didn't get touched by this? How the hell did that happen? Not every single place on the planet is where somebody wants to go for a vacation. I said, even before Donald Trump came right out and said it, we got to shut down the borders. And when I say shut down the borders, I mean seal it up. Nobody walks across, nobody drives across, nobody flies into our interior. If they do, they land, they can refuel, and then get the hell back where they came from. But oh no, we can't do that. If you do that, here's what the government would say, and did say. You're nothing but a bunch of racist, bigoted xenophobes. And that's the answer. That's the answer they got. And then they unleashed this disgusting disease on the entire planet. They let our countries get filled up with this. They told everybody they weren't allowed to do anything. They told everybody, you're just going to get shut down for a while, stay in your house for a couple of weeks, and then everything will come back to normal. And then they got you in your house for a couple of weeks, and then they pushed it a little further. Well, just a little more, and just a little more. See, this is what you would call a leftist way of getting agendas pushed through. This is why leftists have to be told no for almost every single thing that they come up with, simply because it never, ever stops. They push and push and push and push. And once they get what they want, they push for more. And everybody says, just give them this and they'll shut up. They won't. They will get louder and push for more until you are boxed in and are living a life in hell of absolute misery. Look at everybody now. Look what we've got now with this disease. This is absolutely disgusting. And how come it is, let's just say, that yes, the vaccine has been developed and controlled by the mass majority of 10 countries, being administered there. Well, they developed it. They paid for it. This is how things work. The other countries, the reason they don't do that is because they didn't develop anything. They didn't pay for it. They've been getting stuff donated to them. That comes after somebody has cleaned up their own mess. Their house is in order, then they can look after other people. But World Health Organization is urging wealthier nations to stop vaccinating kids and other low-risk groups and share the shots with poorer countries instead, with the aim to vaccinate 10% of the global population by September. I'm going to share a quote, and this came out of every single lousy, stinking politician all over the Western world, the so-called wealthier nations. They were told to shut down, and people didn't want to. They had businesses. They said, hey, I can't survive like this. And the politicians said, shut it down. Just do it. Because, and here's the hot part, if it saves even one life, it will all be worth it. Well, us shutting things down in our countries is not going to help these other countries at all, because then we have less money to frivolously give away. But that's the way that they want it. Okay, so in Africa, apparently, less than 2% of the population has received one dose of the vaccine, compared to more than 50% vaccinated in Canada. All right, there's 38 million people in Canada. There's 1.35 billion people in Africa. Okay? A little bit of a discrepancy, and that's why they use the percentage instead of the actual numbers, because it makes it look worse percentage-wise. Okay? Lower to middle income countries primarily rely on COVAX, the global vaccine sharing initiative, to access doses, but supply has been vastly inadequate. 72 million COVAX doses shipped so far have barely covered 1% of the combined population of 125 receiving countries, apparently, according to this General Tedros. Lower income countries were recently hit with the news that the main supplier for COVAX, which was the India-based Serum Institute, was freezing all their exports until at least the end of the year, as it focuses on its domestic population. COVID has hit India with a ferocity not seen since the pandemic began, with the virus claiming more lives there per week than Canada has recorded in the past 14 months, and bringing the healthcare system to near total collapse. Yeah, and did you notice something? They're freezing the amount of doses that they are sending out until their people are vaccinated. When Ananya Tina Banjari, an epidemiologist at McGill University in Montreal, got her first dose of the vaccine, she didn't feel a sense of joy or relief that was shared by many. She felt guilty to have been offered a life-saving vaccine while so many vulnerable people around the world lack access. Because she has family in India where just 11.5% of the population has been vaccinated and hears of a new relative contracting it each week. We're on the brink of a catastrophic moral failure, she said. I just don't think wealthier nations are really understanding that this is a global pandemic and not just a pandemic within their own borders. Nationalism has gained force during the pandemic, said Dr. Srinivas Murthy, infectious disease specialist at BC Children's Hospital in Vancouver, with comparisons between countries' infection levels, deaths, and vaccination rates a common topic of conversation and focus in the media. You know something? These people are sitting here riding their little high horse, looking down at everybody, saying, oh, our country, this isn't fair. That's how I'm reading it. She goes, this is a failure. She doesn't think that wealthier nations are really understanding that this is a global pandemic and not just a pandemic within our own borders. Yet she went and took a vaccine inoculation. Why didn't she say, no, you can earmark mine for one of those poorer countries? Why don't people get the option to do that? And then she doesn't have to feel so guilty. She can go about her business, working at her job, not vaccinated, and be happy that she's given it away to some other more deserving, apparently, nation. So, thinking of a global pandemic in terms of the performance of individual countries is dangerous, according to Murthy. Just because a life is lost in the United States and not in Canada doesn't mean that we're not, or we are, winning this pandemic, he said. What we should care about is the number of lives lost everywhere. No, I'm sorry. You care about your own people. And if you're not worried about your own people first, then there's something wrong with you. Beyond the ethical issues associated with wealthier countries, hoarding vaccines, as long as COVID continues to spread unfettered around the world, there is a higher possibility of new variants emerging that can seep across borders and threaten vaccine protection. There's a way to stop this. It's called seal up the borders. Don't allow people across or into your country. Yeah, that's how you can stop this. And when the people complain by saying, but I want to travel, fine, then you travel there and you stay there until everything's all cleaned up. If it's not, you're not coming back. So how much do you want to travel now? And really, what's the percentage of people that travel all the time, particularly outside their own country? It's bad enough in a country the size of Canada that people are stupid enough to travel from, Ontario to New Brunswick or over to British Columbia and back, where you could be spreading this disease all over the country. All over. And what are you traveling for? Well, I know why you're going to BC. I know where you're going in the Maritimes. I know where you're going everywhere. Oh, I need a vacation. Well, too bad. Just be thankful you got a job, if you still do. My gosh. Anyways, the variants are first identified in India, it didn't develop there out of chance, said Dr. Zain Chagla, infectious disease physician at St. Joseph's Healthcare, Hamilton. It was large-scale transmission among a large population that led to variant evolution. Those variants have the risk of completely unraveling our vaccination campaign if they escape vaccine immunity. The only way to end the global pandemic is by boosting global immunity rather than protecting a few countries while ignoring the needs of the rest. But as Canada continues to expand its rollout, it can be difficult to know when to draw the line. Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea, because if you tell anybody in this country they are not allowed to have that vaccine and they die, something tells me that a lawsuit should be gone through, a massive lawsuit towards this government for not allowing them, as a Canadian, as somebody who pays this country through their taxes, robbed by this country through their taxes, I might add, for these morons to make these ridiculous statements that they should be doing this, and then to actually give away what is rightfully owned by the people of this country? That's absolutely ridiculous. And on top of that all, they've been threatening everybody that if they didn't get a virus, they weren't going to be able to do anything or go anywhere. They weren't going to be able to shop. They weren't going to be able to go to a restaurant. They weren't going to be able to go to see a movie even. And travel? Forget that. Unless you've got yourself all hooked into your little phone and you can prove that you've been vaccinated, well, too bad. You're a nobody and you're going nowhere in a hurry. But they're going to draw the line and say, no, you're not allowed to have a vaccine to people. Ultimately, decisions about who gets prioritized for a vaccine should be made based on who is most likely to be hospitalized and die from COVID-19. I see. It should be made to only if you're going to be hospitalized and die. I thought that this thing was so dangerous. I thought this was the be-all and end-all of diseases. That's the way that everything has been portrayed. We've all got to be running around with masks on. We can't see relatives. We can't do anything. We can't participate in anything. Somebody got a ticket for shaking someone's hand in public. Yeah, I think it was like a couple $100 for shaking somebody's hand. They got caught by a cop. Yeah, I'm really proud of the police now, let me tell you. So, anyways, the risk of severe illness or death from COVID is much lower among younger and healthier populations. And yet, when people like myself or others were saying this, we were called conspiracy theorists. And we're out of our minds because, no, that's not true. Like, everybody's got to. And they would come out with all sorts of reasons as to why it matters anyway, because we can then carry the disease and bring it home to these people who are all susceptible to catching it. So, sounds to me like, realistically speaking, everybody should get this. Well, that's the way they're talking. So we clean up our mess here, then we expand. If we can share one, we can. If we can't share one, we don't. Okay. As of May 27th, 11 of Canada's more than 25,000 deaths have been people under the age of 20. People under 20 have accounted for just 1.2% of Canada's COVID ICU admissions. The more than 1.8 billion vaccines administered globally so far could have protected all healthcare workers and older people around the world had they been divvied up inequitably. France has become the first country to dip into its domestic supply to share vaccines, sending over 31,000 doses to Mauritania, with another 74,400 on the way. The EU and the US have also promised to share 100 million and 80 million doses, respectively, with low-income countries by the end of the year. Africa urgently needs at least 20 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine in the next 6 weeks to administer second doses to everyone who received their first within the 8 to 12 week recommended interval between doses. Experts say Canada should immediately divert vaccines to countries in need and work to fulfill its international responsibility long term by building up domestic vaccine production to benefit the globe. Wealthier countries can also contribute to global vaccine equity by sharing resources and knowledge to help low and middle income countries build capacity and protect their own populations. Banjiri, Chagla, Murthy, and a group of more than 100 primarily South Asian doctors, health experts, and advocates wrote a letter calling on the Canadian government to support temporarily waiving intellectual property rights for companies producing virus products and technologies so countries around the world can benefit from their knowledge. The pandemic has shrunk our lives immensely, making it hard to see the world beyond our own four walls or surrounding communities. Ending the pandemic will require looking outward and ensuring vulnerable people in every country are protected. And how is it that I look at this? This is ridiculous. People like myself have not gone anywhere. We have not traveled anywhere. So why is it that my life gets turned upside down? And I'm not the only one. There's millions of us who don't have the luxury of travel, don't have the luxury of going out and doing things every night. We're not loaded with all kinds of cash, or even a little bit to do something with. And yet our government has no problem whatsoever turning our lives upside down, telling us no, telling us we can't have this, we can't have that, we can't even go out and earn a living. And they hand us a couple of bucks. That's if you are allowed to get it. I'm not. Isn't that wonderful? So I don't even get the inflation dollars. I'm absolutely disgusted with this country. And if they start shipping things out before people are allowed to get vaccinated, I hope that they get taken to court personally. You know that way that they want to make it in the United States, where they take away that provision that if somebody gets hurt or whatever by a police officer, that the person's family can sue the police officer personally. I want that with our politicians. You are dealing with our lives here. You were elected to represent us, not the rest of the world. Too bad. I feel for them, but just to a point. Once you get beyond my borders, I still care about you, but not as much as the people within my borders. The citizens of Canada are who I look for. Number one. That's it. After that, everybody else just falls in a numerical mess. Well, now the part y'all been waiting for. My bad joke. What's green and fuzzy, and if it falls out of a tree, can kill you? A pool table. Well, it can. Anyways, I want you to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications of more of my words of wisdom. And I'm probably going to lose this video on YouTube, so maybe if you can do this right away for me, share it amongst everybody on your social media. I'd really appreciate that, because I'm getting pounded here. Anyways, thanks a lot, and until later, have a Java on Zoot.